Hello all, I'm Snipey47A and I'm here with Spencer B96 and they're here. Space rebalancing that we've been promised now for quite a few weeks has finally hit the Tribble test server, and Spencer and I are going to, over a series of 4 videos, take you through in a bit more detail exactly what's going on and what we've discovered thus far about the changes, and give you a little bit more in-depth look at. For those of you who don't know us, Spencer and I are admins of the DPS channels in Star Trek Online, namely the 10K channel, 30K, 50K, 75K, 100K, and DPS Prime channel.
Howdy everyone, SOB here at SpencerB96 in-game. I am a DPS channel admin and fleet leader of the level 65 shopping mall, The Breakfast Club. Snipey and I have been testing these changes ever since they went live last week. We have put many hours in to test them. We have many things that we've learned that we are going to share with you all. Some things that weren't mentioned in the patch notes, which will be at the end of this video. And we will have many other videos coming out in the near future, so keep an eye out on Snipey's channel and my channel, Sob's Casual Corner.
So in this video we are going to be looking at items. Okay, so items like resist consoles, traits, and carrier pets. We're also going to be looking at major mechanic changes that are going to be affecting a wide variety of abilities in Star Trek Online.
First up, we have engineering consoles, the resistance ones specifically. The ones that previously only gave resistance to plus kinetic and plus energy damage now give resistance to everything. So that's physical, radiation, everything that wasn't covered before. That was annoying all of us a bunch.
Does that include electrical?
Yes, electrical. Hopefully we'll confirm that in the AMA later today.
What AMA? What are you talking about?
The Ask Me Anything that Spartan is doing about the balance pass and the mechanics changes.
Electrical and radiation resistance. Can you?
No, we can't. Currently, those are some of the things that don't show up on the space stats page. They show up for ground, but not for space. So far on Tribble, they've added physical resistance in, but they haven't added the others. Hopefully, we'll see them over there soon.
If they added one, they could have added the rest. I just don't understand. Well, moving on. The next one on the list is for a stat that's being added to Epic quality on all Impulse engines. It's adding plus 20 Impulse expertise, which is a welcome improvement. For some of us, that may mean that we don't have to spend that extra token in our skill tree and put it somewhere else. And for others of us, it means that we can just go faster at impulse speed. So that's all being retroactively applied. When I logged into Tribble, I looked at my Epic Impulse engines and they all had it.
Next up, we have secondary deflectors from the Fleet Research Lab. Currently on Holodeck, they only give you 3 of the 4 modifiers they're supposed to. And when you upgrade to Epic, they give you that 4th modifier, and it's random right now. This change will make it so that you have all 4 modifiers off the bat, so you know what you're buying, which I think is a welcome improvement. It takes the gamble out of something that shouldn't be a gamble.
Absolutely. When I looked at the list, Spencer, there's a lot of deflectors there.
This could potentially limit the ones you could get that would be ideal. But I think that knowing what you're going to buy ahead of time is always better than the gamble.
Some of the things I found interesting are the modifiers to things that are outside the science realm. Traditionally, like they're associated with the tactical skill tree, like accuracy, and defense, and energy weapon damage, and I think energy weapon power, if I'm not mistaken. So. Next, we have changed to 2 consoles, whether the stat appears on a console amongst other stats, or whether you actually just craft these consoles straight out. What I'm specifically talking about here is the shield emitter amplifier and the hull restoration Sith generator. So what Cryptic have said they've done, that they have provided increase to the shield emitter amplifier, which is meant to increase shield regeneration rate, or your natural rate. And on the hull side, the increase is directly buffing your hull restoration, which benefits your hull heals. Now, in looking at what this change actually meant, we compared the same consoles, or the same stat increase, I should say, on both Tribble and Holodeck. We didn't really see that much of an shield regeneration with similar shield power and that sort of thing, but there was a sizable improvement with just a little bit of a tiny stat increase on the Tribble side for your hull heal. Yeah, I'm not sure whether if shield regeneration is working as Spartan intended, but for a line item in patch notes, the change wasn't as much as wasn't noticeable. It wasn't really noticeable. It only really went up about 10 shield points over the period of time that it healed.
Next up, we have the Dilithium Store update, a new tab called Account Starship Trait Unlocks. What this basically does is it makes all of your C-Store ships that are faction exclusive currently, like the T6 Excelsior or the Advanced Escort, it allows you to claim those traits on your Romulan and KDF characters if you have the trait unlocked on the Federation character, and it does this for all other faction unique ships. This is a welcome change. It's nice that they didn't monetize it like they did with Reciprocity. And this isn't a temporary change. It's permanent, so all future stuff, I imagine, will be added in. I would love to see it expanded to consoles, but just having the traits alone helps massively.
I completely second what Spencer has just said then. This was completely unexpected. I think the way to look at it is that while there are some really things in this in these patch notes that have upset the community, this is one of the things that should be acknowledged as being, a really, really good and smart move by Cryptic to not put extra burden on resources just to get a trait that you have already bought on another character. The next category is carrier pets. Now, carrier pets have received no other way of putting it, they have received a big buff in this update. I'll go through the base changes for all carrier pets, and this is going to help them be more effective. We have seen that they move around a little bit faster. I can't see any real difference in their AI, but maybe this is a work in progress. But there is a definite upside to these changes so far. So first of all carrier pets are now immune to warp core breaches. Really, really big thing about your pets is that they're slow to move away from an area, and a warp core breach just take them out. So completely immune to it. Now, all carrier pets have what's called Layer Defense 3, which is immunity to 1 torpedo every 30 seconds. Carriers now have significantly increased damage, hit points, power draining, shield healing, and shield draining. Now, this is across the board, and when used with the tactical skill tree, the coordination protocols, it has made some pets really, really powerful. The first pet that I went to go and do a comparison on was the Elite Romulan drone ships. I did this in Japori, being the first ship first test. I had really high expectations of the result, and I didn't really see that much of an increase. It was about 10% of overall damage. As I started to move on to different pets, I actually dusted off my old Narcine, the Zindi Aquatic Narcine, which has the Mobileye frigate pets, and performance of those pets has been nothing short of unbelievable. In this specific list of pets here on the patch notes, Cryptic have done some improvements on a specific set of pets. Okay, so they have added, the way it looks, they've added AoE abilities to many pets. So the Callistos from the Jupiter have at least Scattered Volleys 2, and on the Advanced and Elite it goes Scattered Volleys 3. Now, I don't have a Jupiter, I don't know how those pets perform. Let us know if you guys have them and do some tests. The next two pets I do have, the Insectoid and the Primate pets. Now, I just before this recording had a little bit of play with the Primate pet. Fire at Will 3 is very, very welcome, and they do have Emergency Power Shields 3 as well for a bit of survivability. How the Primate performs, based on what I've seen from, I would expect that the Primate ships will perform a little bit better. Now, these pets can be mix and match between the three of the 4 current Xindi ships that can carry pets. So if you've got these already, dust them off, take them out, and see how they do. I think you will be pleasantly surprised. And they have clarified and or made some changes to the Enterprise J pets.
Okay, next up on major mechanics changes. First up, we have energy weapons now always drain power when firing instead of all but one. For those that didn't know, as it is on holodeck right now, your first weapon you fire drains no power. Then the weapons after it start to drain power. So this change ends that. I don't think it's that bad. I think you'll have to compensate just a little bit, but I don't think it's the end of your build.
No, not at all. Especially since when you were using Fire at Will, you didn't get that first weapon for free anyway. And in fact, you got a little penalty for each beam of one weapon power when Fire at Will is active, because Fire at Will fires an extra shot per cycle per beam. So
Next up, with that weapon power is the equation used to determine how weapons power influences your damage has been changed. It now gives you a much higher benefit at low power levels and is the same as it was before when you are at 100 weapons power. However, it also means that the higher your weapon power is, the less of a bonus it is compared to how it is now. I think that isn't the best thing ever for people using like override subsystem safeties or things like that, but I don't think it's going to kill your build either. I still think that's going to be something worth doing, but it's certainly something just to keep in mind.
So moving on, all hazard abilities now no longer affect torpedoes or mines. So that's things like gravity wells, and some torpedoes just go straight through them. And for heavy torpedoes and mines, that's really, really important, because in the past, a repel sort of ability could affect those torpedoes traveling to a ship. So it's like you've never fired them, and it's a waste of an attack. So I think Odin Knight will be happy with that sort of change to the way that hazard affect his torp build.
Yep. And then next up is the hot restart powers. So many people should know about these if you use your Iconian gear at all. You'll notice that most of the pieces have a hot restart feature that makes it so that if a subsystem is disabled, it'll immediately come back up. Well, there's multiple things in the game that do that, but now they have a 60-second lockout on a per subsystem basis. So if you have an engine 1 trigger, another engine 1 can't trigger for 60 seconds, but a weapons 1 or shields 1 could still trigger and then get their lockout to go. This is a pain for people that use OSS, and I think it'll be noticeable on some things. I don't think it'll be too bad, though.
The first of the line items in the patch notes, which has been of very vocal feedback from the community about that. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that, Spencer? What are your thoughts on for me, it's just putting OSS back to the way it was meant to be used. You have a little penalty after having a big buff.
Which is how it should be. With things like that, they're supposed to have a downside. And it's good that they have a downside.
Continuing on with abilities in the game that are going to have a resistance or lockout on them after they've been used. So this prevents, I guess in PvP it's probably more important, but even if you are getting a lot of threat from NPCs with these abilities, it is a little bit of a protection for you to not get excessively either held or disabled. Now a hold is anything like a tractor beam, it would be like a grab well or something like that. If you have a hold ability put against you, you will have a resistance to more hold abilities for a short duration. Okay, and we're currently trying to determine what that duration is, and we'll add it to the notes below this video once we have that. Same with disables. Disable is another one that has been abused stack-wise, and recent traits like from the Lucari, Tier 2 Lucari space did a little bit to improve this, but people have gotten around it. So probably, yeah, it is a bit PvP-ish, but you know, there are areas in the PvE world where this is impacting you as well. So I think this is a positive change.
Then next up, we have a big one here with player damage immunities. So things like Invincible, your pilot abilities, some of the pilot spec things. There's now a 15-second lockout after you use one before you can use another. That's great. That means you can no longer have constant uptime on immunities. I think before, when I did a spreadsheet like a year and a half back, just with what was available back then, it was 43 seconds of uptime on immunities. That was just stupid. 43 seconds out of every minute. Nah.
In a pilot ship.
Yeah, in the pilot ship. But this was a good change. In addition, all player damage immunities are now buffs that can be removed by things like Subnuke. That's also a very good thing. It means that you're not going to see people in PvP, going around surviving everything because of immunities. You'll be able to wipe their immunities off, laugh at them, and vape them. I think that's going to be a great thing. I think it'll be a great source of QQ. And then finally for this video, the cycle during which cannon weapons actively fire is now 5 seconds, up from 3. The damage cannon weapons do with each shot has been adjusted to account for the changes made to their firing cycles. So this puts cannons on par with beams for firing cycles, meaning that procs will be the same across the board. But I think that's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing as well. One of the big things that did hold back cannons for a while, when a player has moved through the game, got more knowledgeable, and realized that the DPS on the tooltip doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to do more DPS overall, is that cannons had a lot shorter firing cycle than a beam. So a beam has a 5-second firing cycle where 4 of those seconds it's shooting. Cannons, like single cannons and dual cannons and turrets, had a 3-second cycle, and dual heavy cannons had a 2-second cycle. And why this was why this was holding back cannons is because your firing cycle had a direct impact to what you could achieve as in a reserve of power over and above 125 on your weapons power, which is generally called overcap. Your power transfer rate also impacts the overcap size, and the reason why beams have been so powerful because the game engine will put power above 125 as it's coming back into the system, and when beams start firing, they use the power from that point, but the damage is always calculated at 125. Now, cannons didn't have that big reserve above 125, and they naturally use more power anyway, which means they always had less DPS. The other big thing with cannons was their AoE ability is not anywhere near as effective as fire at will. What about dual cannons, Spencer? Are dual cannons the same?
Yes, dual cannons are the same. All cannons are now the same. Turrets, single cannons, everything.
So why would someone go with a dual cannon over a dual heavy or vice versa?
Well, dual heavy cannons and dual cannons basically have the same DPS. The only difference is dual heavies have half the amount of shots, and each shot does twice the damage. And dual heavy cannons, they fixed the issue, so dual heavy cannons now have their innate plus 10 crit D, whereas before that was lost when you hit scatter volley or rapid fire. So if dual heavy cannons fire once every second, dual cannons will fire twice a second.
Right.
Simplify it really.
That's, yeah. We'll go through in a later video the results for rapid fire and cannon scatter volleys with the new cannon firing cycles, so stay tuned for that.
So while there were many things listed with these patches, there were quite a few significant things that Cryptic left out, some of which they later put in the threads, but they're big things that should have been included in the original patch notes. One of the most significant that has caused a lot of crying from the player base is the Leech nerf. Plasmonic Leech no longer scales with Drain-X for the portion that gives you power. The portion that still drains the target, that still scales. It's just the part that gives you power does not. It is now capped at 0.75 power per stack, meaning at 8 stacks of Leech, you're getting 6 power to each subsystem. Now, this is a massive hit for the Leech. Some people were getting 48 power to each subsystem with high Drain-X builds.
50 getting
50, yeah, it's really high. So that's a significant change. What are your thoughts on it, Snipey?
It's been a console that has been around since very early part of Star Trek Online. It was expensive at one point. They brought it Infinity Box. It became access to a lot of the player base. Now, yes, some drain builds are able to get a very high amount out of it, but we're talking about such a small percentage, and primarily because Cryptic made the decision to have consoles that have 2 lots of Drain-X stats. So I think this was a hit that tarnishes the overall package of what they're trying to achieve. Okay, this has really upset a lot of the player base. Some of us are lucky we've got Supremacy. We can, we're still generating 20 power without the Leech. But, yeah. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure this is the right call.
Yeah, it's still, even with that, very hard to compensate for such a huge loss.
What were you getting on your standard build for Leech? I was getting about 18 or 19.
Yeah, right around 20.
Yeah, so so the extra power that we've been getting has been cut in half. And for a Romulan, that is that's pretty significant because you start with 40 less overall power to begin with. So, yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know what to make of that one yet. It's a very unusual decision, and the fact that they didn't tell us and we popped onto Tribble and it was just there. I thought it was a bug. And I posted there, and they go, "No, that's the way it's meant to be." Yeah, right.
Yeah, but that was like, you'd figure something that important would have been in the patch notes and not, forgotten.
It's I don't know, my opinion on it all, if you're going to make the change, just come out and say it, okay? If it was genuinely forgotten on the patch notes, fine, but it just reeked of maybe we won't tell them everything, and I don't think that's the best way to foster good relationships with your playing community.
Yeah, but the thing is I will agree with one statement they said. is that even as it is still over twice as good as the existing power consoles. So it's not like you're not going to want to use it if you have it. I mean, that's still 6 power to each subsystem. It isn't an insignificant amount. It's still something.
Yeah, I guess you're able to look at it with a little bit more, being a little bit more positive. I've actually taken it off my build. I don't see a place on my build for that console now. Even the tunes I don't have Supremacy on, I've taken it off. So, yeah, I think it's... What's next, Spencer?
Next up, we have the Iconian 3-piece.
This one's gonna cause...
Currently on holodeck, it allows up to 15 stacks, 3 from each teammate, within 10 kilometers, something like that.
Yeah.
But over on Tribble, it is now capped at 3 stacks, and the damage buff on it, I believe, was lowered.
Well, that's not 3 stacks per player, everyone. That's 3 stacks. So we've gone from 15 potentially to 3. And yes, the damage has been affected and lowered. So, and I actually never thought I would say this. Potentially that the Iconian 3 or 4 piece is not going to be a part of the new meta. We can see a place for the shield, can't we, Spencer?
Yes, the shield is still the best shield in the game.
Easily, yeah.
With the debuff removal. I personally would like to see that debuff removal time extended to 20 seconds, but that's just me.
It is a little bit short for some attack scenarios, particularly like Energy Siphon and stuff like that, but particularly on a 1v1 basis. But yeah, it's we're currently testing out different combinations of what is going to end up being the meta. And I don't know what your opinion is yet, Spencer, but I think that there's going to be several metas depending on which way you want to go. You know what I mean? And I think that's what this has brought up. It's brought up options.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think there's going to be any specific thing to tell people to do like there was before with threat tanks. I think it's going to be whatever fits your playstyle. And it's really just about the pilot. Your piloting is, as always, the most important thing.
Yep, absolutely. Next one is a surprise as well. Energy Refrequencer. Any DPSer will know that this is pretty much one of the standard 5 personal space reputation traits. For those of you that don't know what it does, it heals your hull as a percentage of your outgoing damage, which I believe is 2.5% over, and it calculates it many times a second. That has received a significant nerf. It's quite big now. Partly because we're doing less damage overall, but more so because of the change to the trait itself. Have we got any figures on that, Spencer?
Yeah, it is now capped at 125 healing per second, whereas on holodeck, DPS builds have been seeing up around 750 to 1,000 healing per second from it. So that's like a 80%, 90% hit. Easily, 80 to 90% hit easily.
So they've just changed the way that it functions. It still heals you, but as a cap to that healing, no matter what damage that you do. It will disadvantage ships with bigger hull because you're healing a smaller percentage of that hull heal. So yeah, that sort of throws up what to replace it with, and we're currently working on that at the moment. And finally, Spencer, what's yours?
I don't remember what the other thing was. Please.
Okay.
What is it?
OKS.
Oh, Omega Kinetic Shearing. Well, that didn't get a nerf or anything, but it needs to.
Phew, absolutely.
Look, that trait by itself is doing as much damage as you'd get from 3 or 4 embassy consoles on right now on holodeck for a Torp build over there. It's absurd. I mean, giving 30 to 40k from a single rep trait? I think you could take every other offensive trait in the rep space trait section, put them all together. If you could equip them all, it wouldn't equal the value of OKS on a Torp boat.
Close.
You could probably have all of them on 2 or 3 times, and it most likely still wouldn't quite get there. That's how powerful this thing is.
What's the highest you've seen on Dribble?
40, I think 40-ish.
45, yeah. That's just from one trait. So, and that's what many of us were typically getting with 4 to 5 Plasma Explosion console. The better of us were getting, they were doing double that with Plasma Explosion, but generally, this is the Plasma Explosion of console for Torps, and it wasn't touched. So, for those of you who don't know what Omega Kinetic Shearing does, it applies 40% of that torpedo's attack damage as a damage over time for 6 seconds. So for every torp that you throw at a ship, 40% of it will get reapplied over a period of time. Every time. There is no chance for that. So in many ways it's worse than the plasma consoles. That was at least a proc.
This is a guaranteed.
It's
It's
guaranteed.
something that they need to address.
It's one of the oldest space traits. It is actually from the first. It's a mega trait, so it's like the first rep system, isn't that?
Yeah, I think they could take it down to a tenth of what it is, and it'd still be better than most of these traits. It'd still be better than every other one there. That's how powerful it is. That shouldn't be like that. I think it should be changed to give, just give a flat plus 10 or 20 armor pen to projectile weapons. I think that'd be fair.
Absolutely. Although I can hear Odin sharpening his knife right now. So
He can sharpen his knife. He knows that this is some cheese that he's trying to hold on to be effective in these elite queues.
Well, we better close off this video. And
Thank
we're
you
out.
all for watching.